He built the largest real estate company on earth, $330 billion in assets, 800 cities, millions of homes. Then the debt came due, all at once, $305 billion. This is Evergrande. He built the largest real estate company in the world, not the largest in China, the largest on earth. $330 billion in assets, 128,000 employees, 800 cities across China, millions of homes sold, promised, under construction. Then, one morning, the entire thing began to collapse, and the debt he had hidden for decades came due all at once. $305 billion. The largest corporate debt pile any company had ever accumulated in the history of the world. This is Evergrande, and this is the story of how one man's obsession with growth almost brought down the entire Chinese economy. Hui Ka Yan was born in 1958 in Henan Province, China. He was not born into wealth or privilege. His mother died when he was 8 months old. He grew up in extreme poverty in rural China. He studied at Wuhan University of Science and Technology. He graduated in 1982. He worked in a steel factory for 10 years. In 1992, he moved to Shenzhen, the booming special economic zone in southern China, with nothing but ambition. In 1996, he founded Evergrande Real Estate. The timing was perfect. China's economy was exploding. The government was urbanizing hundreds of millions of rural citizens. People needed homes, millions of them, urgently. Hui Ka Yan understood one thing above all others. In China, land is everything. Whoever controls the land controls the wealth. He began buying land, aggressively, everywhere, in every city, in every province. Not with his own money, with borrowed money, always borrowed money. This was the foundation of the Evergrande model. Buy land with debt, build homes on that land, sell the homes before they were finished. Pre-sales, use that money to buy more land, borrow more money to build more homes. Repeat, forever. For 20 years, the model worked. China's property market never stopped growing. Prices rose every year. Demand never slowed. The government always stepped in to support the market. Evergrande grew from a small Shenzhen developer into the largest real estate company on earth. By 2018, Hui Ka Yan was briefly the richest man in Asia, with a personal net worth of over $40 billion. He owned a private island. He owned a fleet of private jets. He owned the most expensive house in Hong Kong. He was celebrated as a symbol of Chinese ambition, proof of what was possible in the new China. But beneath the towers and the billions, the debt was growing every year, faster than the revenue. Because Evergrande was not just building homes, it had expanded into electric vehicles. It had bought a football club, Guangzhou FC. It had launched a bottled water brand. It had entered health management, tourism, internet businesses, theme parks. It had built theme parks, all of it funded by the same mechanism: borrowed money, pre-sold homes, more borrowed money, more pre-sold homes. By 2020, Evergrande owed money to over 128 banks, over 1,200,000 suppliers, and over 1.5 million ordinary Chinese families who had paid in full for homes that had not yet been built. Then the Chinese government moved. In August 2020, the government introduced what it called the 3 red lines policy, 3 financial limits that all Chinese property developers had to stay within. It was a direct signal to companies like Evergrande. The era of unlimited borrowing was over. Evergrande failed all 3 red lines. It could no longer borrow freely. It could no longer roll over its debts endlessly. The machine stopped. In 2021, Evergrande began missing payments, first to suppliers, then to banks, then to the ordinary families who had paid for homes. By September 2021, the scale of the crisis became clear. $305 billion in debt, 2.5 million unfinished homes, suppliers who had not been paid for months,
construction workers who had received no wages, ordinary families with no home and no refund. The global financial markets panicked. Was this China's Lehman Brothers moment? Would the Chinese government let Evergrande fail and trigger a global financial crisis, or would it step in and save it? The answer was neither. The Chinese government did something different. It did not bail out Evergrande, but it also did not let it collapse entirely. It managed the situation carefully, controlling the flow of information, restructuring the debt slowly, allowing some construction to restart, while protecting the broader financial system. Hui Ka Yan himself was placed under police investigation in September 2023. He was accused of crimes under Chinese law, the details of which were not fully disclosed. He was detained. Evergrande filed for bankruptcy protection in the United States in August 2023. In January 2024, a Hong Kong court ordered Evergrande to liquidate $330 billion in assets. Gone.
The liquidators began the process of recovering what little they could for the hundreds of thousands of creditors. What they found was far less than what had been promised. The ordinary families who had paid for homes, many of them waited years for construction to restart. Some homes were eventually completed. Many were not. The suppliers who were owed billions, most recovered only a fraction of what they were owed. The banks, some absorbed enormous losses, and the 1,200,000 workers who had built Evergrande's empire, many found themselves unemployed in cities where Evergrande had been the largest employer. So what is the real lesson of Evergrande? Evergrande did not fail because of bad luck. It failed because an entire system, regulators, banks, investors, and the government itself, allowed one company to accumulate $305 billion in debt over 2 decades. Because the growth was good for the economy. Because the employment numbers looked strong. Because the property market kept rising. Because nobody wanted to be the one who stopped the music. The lesson of Evergrande is not about China. It is about what happens when growth becomes the only measure that matters. When the question of how is never asked. When one man's ambition and one system's appetite for growth are allowed to build on a foundation of borrowed time. That is, the capital case. The biggest collapses in history are never sudden. They are slow, quiet, and completely visible to anyone willing to look. Subscribe to the capital case, because the next case is already waiting.